Hey, hi.
It's me. I'm the problem. It's me.
No. I was just saying, I wasn't singing with you. No. I think we need a new rule that you are not allowed to sing on any of these.
Okay.
No.
Well, with that.
Anyway, hey. No?
Have you watched every fantasy show or movie and are wondering what to do next? Maybe you should start reading some books.
Yeah, so are there any books out there that match the likes of your movie? What? The likes?
The likes of your movie? What she's trying to say is, if you like this show or TV thing, what books will you like?
Thing.
Show or TV thing. Okay, we're gonna start over here. Let's start over here. Okay, ready? Let's do this.
Okay. It was like the...
Okay.
Sorry, my head itches now.
Loud noise. Okay. Have you watched every fantasy TV show or movie and are wondering how to get your fantasy fix?
Are there more books out there for you that relate to the movies that you've watched and loved?
In this episode of Blame Me, we're going to share what books you should read if you like particular shows or movies and other fantasy adaptations.
And some of them kind of interweave a little differently than you would expect.
It kind of happens, right? If you like certain TV shows out there, you're going to like some books that also have had an adaptation made for these books. Well, we're going to jump right into this with the granddaddy of them all when it comes to fantasy adaptations, The Lord of the Rings. What should you read if you liked The Lord of the Rings movies?
I'm saying it. It's The Wheel of Time.
Oh, yeah, you should.
It is worth the read.
It is.
And Lord of the Rings, if you've got the patience to sit through all those movies, right? That takes patience. That's a lot of hours. Then you can do a big series.
Yep, especially if you can do the extended version of Lord of the Rings, then you've got the time for the Wheel of Time gauntlet that is before you.
So funny because there's like tons of characters in Lord of the Rings, and I feel like they're just always traveling somewhere. And I feel like that's a lot of what's happening in Wheel of Time too.
Totally.
There's a lot of traveling.
Yep.
It's amazing. It's an amazing series, and it's really complex and it's really big. But I think it's worth the read.
Definitely. And I think if you like Lord of the Rings, you're definitely going to like at least The Eye of the World, which follows a very similar narrative to something like The Fellowship of the Ring. They start to diverge there a little bit, but the kind of chosen one trope is definitely there, very apparent.
Totally.
Very large epic series, lots of mythology and things behind it. Really, really good. And is being adapted into a TV show, which we may or may not be talking about here in just a second.
Maybe.
All right. Speaking of that same thing, you're talking about epic, the granddaddy. I'm thinking of Star Wars here. If you like Star Wars, what book are you going to like? And this is really kind of a simple one, and actually, again, has another adaptation for it. But if you like Star Wars, you're going to like Dune. Right? Dune is a fantastic science fiction book. It's really epic fantasy set in space. There's a number of Dune books, but the most famous is the first Dune, and you're going to get a lot of what you get with Star Wars here. Very similar setting of a deserted planet, a desert planet, and the kind of space opera that tends to go on there. You're going to get a lot of it here. Would highly recommend it, and really it's not far of a jump. There's a good chance if you've seen Star Wars, you may have seen the adaptation of Dune, which actually is only an adaptation of the first half of this book. So you still need to catch up the second half. Great time to pick up Dune and take a read. I promise if you like Star Wars, you're going to like Dune.
Awesome. Alrighty, so, I mean, we've got a theme here.
Sure.
Because if you love Harry Potter, you loved watching Harry Potter.
Oh, okay.
What do you need to read next? This is Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. It's really similar to Harry Potter. It's school, it's a teenage boy, there's friends, there's drama, there's troublemaking.
There's magic.
There's magic. It's more college. It's not so much elementary and high school.
There's an orphan.
There is an orphan. It is really good. It's a hefty one. And so far there's only 2 out. There's supposed to be a third and final. We'll see if that ever comes out. But It's really good. I will say this one took me just a little bit to get into, but then I just loved it from there.
It's very clearly the heir apparent, if you ask me, to Harry Potter, right? Very similar settings here. If you've liked Harry Potter, there's a good chance you like this. This is just a little more grown up.
Yeah.
A little more complex, a little harder to read, a little more left to the imagination on certain things, and a little more adult themes and content that will potentially get in there, especially as you get into the second book. But still, something that is far worth the read. And I promise, if you liked the Harry Potter, particularly like the movie adaptations of Harry Potter, you're really going to like the book here. Interesting enough is also having an adaptation coming out. Last I heard, with Lin-Manuel Miranda doing the music for it. So it should be really interesting to see what that adaptation is like.
The music
movie-wise.
is a really big part.
It's a huge part of that world.
That's cool.
Yep. Great. So we've done Lord of the Rings. We've done Star Wars. We've talked about Harry Potter. The next one I want to talk about is maybe the most famous fantasy adaptation, and that is Game of Thrones. Right? Game of Thrones has a huge cult following, including us. We loved Game of Thrones. It was great. Game of Thrones is interesting because it is maybe a darker side of fantasy. Right? It is definitely not the one where it ends in a feel-good way,
No.
or even has feel-good things across the whole thing. Right? You get lots of kind of shocking and sad events, and it's a little more dark and gritty. And it reminds me immensely of the First Law series, written by Joe Abercrombie. And so this is The Blade itself. This is the first of the First Law series. And it is a really, really good read, especially if you find yourself liking that type of grim, dark fantasy, as they call it. It really shows the cost of war in a very kind of realistic way, but also has a lot of those political intrigues and things going on there that people loved about Game of Thrones. And so if you liked Game of Thrones, particularly if you like the TV show adaptation and not just Song of Ice and Fire, the book series, I think you'll really love the First Law series, including The Blade itself. Joe Abercrombie is a master of his craft. That craft may not make you feel good. And it is really interesting. And I think the best correlation here is it was really hard eventually to be rooting for any person in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, pretty much.
With the exception of maybe Jon Snow.
Yeah.
Right? He seems to be the one that was there.
True.
Right. In this book, it is really, really hard to pick a person to root for because they're all awful. Right? Which feels very much Game of Thrones-ish. There's complex characters, and they all have immense flaws. This is very, very similar here. So pick it up, give it a read. I think you'll like it.
I don't think I'll like that one.
You know what? I don't know if you will. It is a complexity thing. There's interesting things though, because I'm not sure you'll like the Game of Thrones book itself and the Song of Ice and Fire, the whole series. We'll see. If you like it, then maybe we'll pick up the next one. But I'm not sure. We'll see. All right. So we've done Lord of the Rings. We've done Harry Potter. We've done Star Wars.
Yeah.
We've done Game of Thrones. I think the next biggest fantasy series out there is the worst.
Not the biggest, but the next. We need to shift gears and acknowledge it.
I mean, I guess we kind of have to acknowledge it. I don't know if we have to.
We don't have to. Okay,
It just is.
Twilight.
Yes.
Because it is that. It was a
It's
pretty
huge.
worldwide phenomenon.
It's a giant thing.
Yeah.
And people love it.
Okay, but here's the thing. If you loved watching the movies, there's something wrong with you. Like, that's just a little odd if you like the movies. Like, no. Okay, anyway. Well, it's okay. I forgive you if you loved them. This is Throne of Glass. I think this might be one of my very favorite series of all time. It's really good. And it's got the love story. So...
Does it have vampires?
There are no... In this book, there are no vampires.
Oh, okay.
There are no vampires. Okay, so you got the love story, and it's more of a girly story, and it's more of like an adventure, not like epic, not like anything crazy, and it all takes place mostly in one place, like one kingdom. So it's a lot less intense than some of these, or than some movies, which maybe that's why it works really great with Twilight, is because Twilight is simple, and it's more geared toward the women, towards the girls. This is not YA, by the way. This book, short. Second book, short. Third book, short. And then it just starts to get a little more in its own world of not YA. So, just...
Fair enough.
Yeah, fair warning. Really good book. She is an assassin, and she has been in prison for a long time, and now she has to come to the kingdom to participate in this tournament of sorts to, with the prince, and then there's guards, and it's a good book. There are 7 books in this series, so it doesn't, and this Sarah J. Maas is true to herself throughout all of her series, where there are lots of developments and lots of different relationships. So this is just the beginning, and it starts out really good. There's like some stupid parts in here where I'm like, just ask the doorknob a better question, like things like that. There's magic. There's it's.
I see why you compared it to Twilight. Stupid parts.
Yeah. I'm okay with that.
All right, so there's one last one that we want to bring up, and we actually mentioned the book earlier, right?
Yes.
Said it would or would not be here, but that was The Wheel of Time. If you happen to watch Amazon's adaptation, there's a lot of good and bad that were associated with that. But if you liked that, or if you liked the book series, honestly, you really can't go wrong with picking up the Stormlight Archive, which is written by Brandon Sanderson, who actually finishes The Wheel of Time after Robert Jordan passes away. Brandon Sanderson's entire world is immensely complex and interesting. The Stormlight Archive is probably his crowning achievement. A really, really, really good book. The Way of Kings is the first in this series, and it very much fits into that epic fantasy that the Wheel of Time exists in. And it really maybe carries that torch that the Lord of the Rings passes to Wheel of Time, and the Wheel of Time passes probably to Brandon Sanderson in this epic fantasy thing. There are a few authors maybe out there that, like the Robin Hobbs of the world, that may argue have picked up that torch in another way, but this feels definitely more in that realm than anything else that I've ever read.
I agree.
So I think you will really, really enjoy this. One of the things about Brandon Sanderson is he writes maybe in the most cinematic way of any author I've ever read.
I could agree with that.
Where the scenes feel very much like a movie playing out in my head.
I can picture that whole entire thing.
Yes, where often that's not the case. And so it definitely feels like a movie adaptation already, and I'm sure that there'll be eventually a movie adaptation of it because it is that good.
It will be my favorite of all time movie adaptations.
Or it'll be awful. There's really no in between.
No, like I'm going to love it because it's like my favorite series. So.
Yeah, but it is one of those things where like it's complex enough that the wrong movie adaptation of it will just be heartbreaking.
Botch it.
Right. But Brandon Sanderson is also very, very I don't know what the right word to say is besides like anal about his series, his world, all those type of things, and protects it, right? And so I think that's one of the reasons it's taken a while for an adaptation of this to come out, is because he's going to make sure it matches his vision and not just sell it off for the highest bidder and see how much money it is. I mean, he made like $50 million from a Kickstarter recently. He's got the money to be able to wait until someone wants to do it in a way that matches his vision, and hopefully it's as good as his writing, because if so, it may be the best fantasy adaptation of all time.
Totally.
That's saying a lot, considering the company that we talked about, besides Twilight.
Besides Twilight.
So this has been books that you would like if you liked these TV shows or movies.
Yes.
If we forgot to mention something in here, or if you have any feedback, please let us know in the comments.
Yeah. What else would you have added into here, and what books and TV shows do you think?
Feel free to mention some. Feel free to mention some TV shows or movies that we didn't cover, and maybe we'll do another video talking about what books we think you would like if you like these particular videos. We thought about doing one that's not fantasy related. For instance, if you like Ocean's 11, you may really like something else.
This Is Us. What would you like?
Yeah.
Things like that.
I have no idea. Didn't watch This Is Us, so I imagine some sappy love story, probably.
Sad lemon story. I don't know.
Yeah, not sure. Anyways, I'm Blake.
I'm Jamie.
And we're Blamey.
Guess so. Talk to you later.
Bye. Like and subscribe, maybe, please.
Ring the bell.
There's a bell?
I don't know. Is that what they say?
I think so. I don't know. Bye.